Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Both the Ukrainians and the Russians were not slackers today, and they provided updates of the Ukrainian front. So today I will be fully loaded with one article from the Ukrainians and one article from the Russians. My friends who watch me on a regular basis, they know that I pick the ones so I can balance the lies, or at least to be doubled lied. So I'm going to start with the Ukrainians. I usually start with them because they are a little bit more, let's put it mildly, verbal. And then I'm going to switch into the Russians. I'm going to just alternate. So here is the Ukrainian article coming from Ukrinform. It is from today, the 20th of April 2023. War update. Enemy attempts to conduct offensive in 5 directions. So this is how this one starts, and this is the Russians update from the 20th right here. And this shows how much the Russians got so far. And this, I got a legend here. It seems like they just did it for us, but it doesn't show the colors here. But the black bullets are where the infantry meets. This usually is in Luhansk, Donetsk. Then you have the blue bullets, which is where the Ukrainians shell Russian positions. You have the red bullets, which could be Russians shelling Ukrainian positions, or destroying some saboteurs or reconnaissance units. And you have the yellow ones, which are usually either downing a Ukrainian drone or a Ukrainian aircraft. So this is it. Let's go to the Ukrainians usually start with this North Oblast here in north by Belarus, and then they go here to Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and then Kherson. So they go like clockwise. All right, let's see. Russian troops are focusing efforts on conducting offensive actions in 5 directions. There were only 4 yesterday, now there are 5. Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Marinka, and Shakhtarsk. Ukrainian defenders have repelled over 40 enemy attacks in the past 24 hours. So all these 5 directions are right here, this area right here. Liman is here, Shakhtarsk is here. I'm guessing somewhere down here they go by different names. For instance, Artemovsk for the Russians is Bakhmut for the Ukrainians, and some other towns as well. But is this a little curve right here? Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Marinka, and then you got Shakhtarsk somewhere here. So let's see what the Ukrainians are saying. The relevant statement was made by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Over the past day, Ukraine Air Force has launched 1 strike on enemy personnel, ammunition, and military equipment clusters. Ukrainian missile and artillery units hit 3 Russian command posts. Meanwhile, Russian troops launched 17 airstrikes and opened fire with multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, 33 times. Casualties among civilians were reported. According to the General Staff, the threat of Russian missile and airstrikes is persisting all over Ukraine. Well, the Russians did not conduct their monthly massive missile attack, so I don't know what's up with that. So as I said, they start now in the north. They're going to start, the Ukrainians, talking about what's going on here, and then here, and then here. So in the Volyn, Polisia, Siversky, and Slabozansky directions, the operational situation remained rather unchanged. Belarusian military units continue completing missions in the areas bordering with Ukraine. Some Russian military units are also remaining within the territory of Belarus. I think there are about 7,000 Russian military units, or people, personnel. The enemy, that was the same thing they reported actually yesterday. I remember that one. The enemy is maintaining military presence within the border areas of Russia's Bryansk, Kursk, and Belgorod. So now they're talking about this area right here. That's so the Russians are just keeping their forces here and here with the Belarusians, not doing anything. Over the past day, Russian troops have opened fire on the Chernihiv region, Sumy region, and Kharkiv regions, and they give you the settlement. So they opened fire on these areas right here. The Russians call it Chernigov, Sumy, and Kharkov. Ukrainians Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv. In the Kupiansk region, the enemy launched artillery strikes on the Kharkiv region's Krasnopershe and 4 more settlements. In the Liman direction, so now they're going south a little bit, this way. Liman is in this area, north of Bakhmut. So in the Liman direction, Russian invaders were making attempts to improve their tactical position and conducted unsuccessful offensive actions near the Serebryanske forestry. The enemy launched artillery strikes on the Luhansk region, Donetsk region, so they use artillery in this area. Luhansk is right here, Donetsk is right here, so in this area. All you see here red is Russian bombardments, or here, for instance, they probably destroyed some saboteurs or surveillance troops. Russian forces prevented the action of the Ukrainian armed forces sabotage and reconnaissance groups. So it's here and here. This is at the border with Kharkiv. Kharkiv Oblast right here. All right, let's go back to the Ukrainians. In the Bakhmut direction, fierce battles for the city of Bakhmut continue. Ukrainian defenders repelled 22 enemy attacks. All right, let's see what the Russians are saying about Bakhmut, which they call Artemovsk, right here. So the town is kind of almost surrounded. These guys are advancing on the flanks. This is the town behind. Let's see what the Russians are saying. Russian forces continue operations to eliminate the enemy in the western part of Artemovsk. Artillery and units of the Russian airborne forces of the Yug group provide support and prevent attempts by the Ukrainian armed forces to redeploy reserves and counterattack on the flanks. So the Russians are hitting this, so the guys from here cannot come and help them or push them to the side. The Russians obviously want to encircle them, and then these guys will be forever done. I think they're already done, but hey, I've seen things that turn around. In the Avdiivka direction, so we go south of Bakhmut, Russian troops were conducting offensive actions near the Donetsk regions Kamyanka, Pervomaiske, and Nevelske, but had no success, no wonder. Now, let's see what the Russians are saying. So this is south, with is Avdiivka, almost the same thing as the other side, but the town is not occupied as the other one seemed. Let's see what the Russians are saying. Fighting is taking place on the outskirts of the city. The same thing happened. They reported in the past, 2 or 3 weeks, the same thing. Nothing changed there. In the Shakhtarsk, actually in the Marinka direction, so we go south of Avdiivka, Ukraine's defense forces repelled numerous enemy attacks near the Donetsk region's Marinka. Now let's see what the Russians say about Marinka, which is right here. Fighting is taking place in the western part of the city, the same thing unchanged. Back to the Ukrainian. In the Shakhtarsk direction, Russian invaders conducted unsuccessful offensive actions near Preshchivka and Vuhledar. Now, where Vuhledar, the Russians call it Ugledar, right here. So they talk about the Russians trying to do something here, but unsuccessful attacks, obviously. According to the Ukrainians, and the Russians don't say anything. In the Zaporozhye and Kherson direction, so we go south now, so southeast and then south, Russian occupiers continue holding defense. Over 40 settlements, which are situated close to the contact line, came under enemy fire, namely the Donetsk regions, Pampam, Zaporozhye region, Pamparam, Kherson region. So they are shelling. So this is Zaporozhye, this is Kherson. Not much here, but right here the Ukrainians are bombarding the out of the Russians, probably trying to threaten Crimean Peninsula here. Let's see what the Ukrainians say here. In certain settlements within the Kherson region, temporarily occupied areas, Russian troops intensify counter-sabotage measures as they are afraid of information leaking regarding the deployment of Russian military units. The number of patrols increased and civilian checks became more frequent. According to the available data, during such inspections, Russians take an opinion poll and offer local residents to join the ranks of the Russian army. Okay, so all these are shelling done by the Ukrainians. From previous updates, if I push on them right here and I'm going to access, they're going to say that a village or something, civilian dead and so on. Let's see. Ukrainian forces fired 6 shells at a town using barrel artillery. Let's say this one. The same thing, right? 10 shells. Let's say here. Ukrainian forces shelled civilian infrastructure. And let's see what the Russians say they did here in Ukraine. Russian artillery units destroyed a crew operating a 120mm mortar alongside the ammunition. 4 Ukrainian soldiers were killed, 3 were injured. So when the Russian report that the Ukrainians are shelling them, they usually say, well, they just destroy civilians and civilian infrastructure, and when the Russians report that they shelled the Ukrainians, they only hit military targets. The same thing if you put it in the Ukrainian side. When the Ukrainians hit Russian side, they say, hey, military. When the Ukrainians say the Russians shelled the Ukrainian side, hey, they killed only civilians and civilian infrastructure. That's how a war propaganda works, and you gotta say what you gotta say in these kind of circumstances. So therefore they're all lying. We're just going to try to see, if something major happens, they usually change it. They have to change things on the map, or at least finally about after a week they will yeah, let's confirm that one, but they will usually deny for about a week. That's how I got to figure things out with these guys, especially with the Ukrainians. Russians, I usually keep their mouth shut, but the other ones are lying, and then after a week they say, yeah, maybe something, yeah. Then after a week and a few more days, they tell you, yeah, but it was good that we lost. Then why in the hell you fought? Anyway, thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.